Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 1 of the Having Had podcast. One disclaimer up front. I have no idea what I'm doing. We're figuring this out as we go. So you get to come along for the ride if you're here. I'm going to start off with a story. About 6 weeks ago, I was in the shower one night after getting my kids to bed, and I had just the all of a sudden idea to do this, what we're doing right now. I'm in a unique position that I spent a lot of years on the road as a touring guitar tech, 15 years, and have now been in the film business for longer than that, for 16, almost 17 years. And in addition to that, just have met an incredible amount of people along the way and formed a lot of connections. And the idea was simple, just to have conversations with those people. And through that and reliving experience and talking about, how that experience has shaped who we are today, maybe a listener can connect with that as well. So that was my single intention in doing this. And our first guest today happened to call me the next morning after that very, very important shower, and just called to catch up. And we caught up for a while. And after, probably an hour on the phone, I kind of hesitantly told him about this idea, and he immediately jumped on it, validated it, and encouraged me and got excited about it. And that was information to me that, maybe there's something to this. And even though I kind of feel some imposter syndrome today doing this, I'm just a guy, but it was his encouragement that kind of was the tipping point of starting the last 6-week journey to being here recording an episode. So without any further ado, today I'm joined by my great friend, Clint Lowry. Most of you know him from Sdust. There's a long list of other bands and projects and things he's done that you can Google. But welcome, Clint. I'm so grateful you're here, and thanks for doing this, man.
Thank you, man. And
it's kind of payoff for you to be here because this is kind of in a way your fault.
I'm like the water to the seed of the project. I will say this. I don't know if I told you, but I told Tara that I was doing this, and my wife, Tara, obviously, Brent, is a family friend. Everyone knows. And I told her I was doing your podcast. She's like, "Oh, what's it going to be about?" I said, "Well, I think, with his unique, opportunities he's had in his life with working within music and all these relationships and bands. And then he's moved on to the film industry and all those experiences. And I think the word was connection, that he's trying to, that is the core of where his head's at with this." And I thought that was a cool thing. It was like, yeah, there's very interesting stories along the way and all these things you've been a part of that I've had the pleasure of hearing about over the years. With some of them, like, where are you? What are you doing? Insanity, and outside of our life conversations. But it was cool that you were just like, I want to talk about the connections I've made with these other human beings throughout these shared experiences. And I thought, obviously, you're one of my best friends in the world. So it was like, I know you have an insane gift of storytelling and very just a passionate, loving person. So to be a part of it and to see you kind of step into that fear is great. And I look forward to, I've heard a lot of the stories, but I'm looking forward to seeing your journey with this. Thanks for having me, bud.
I'm just super grateful you're here. I will say, I know you well. I know most of your background. I know your family. I know, we've been friends a long time. But I still, in kind of preparation for this, I'm like, I'm going to look at his Wikipedia page and see if there's anything I don't know. And there wasn't, anything that I didn't know on there, other than I was surprised to see. I know that you are a graduate of Douglas Byrd High School in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And I mostly know that because my wife went to high school. Her dad was at Fort Bragg for a couple years, and she went to a couple years of middle school and high school there, and she went to the rival school because when we were there on a visit, long story, but you guys talked and, oh, you went to Douglas Byrd, she said. So whatever. So when I looked at the Douglas Byrd Wikipedia page, immediately I went to notable people, and I was very discouraged to find that you were not there. It was a bunch of NFL players for the most part.
Total ghost.
Yeah, it was just nothing. And so I submitted or attempted to submit an edit to the Wikipedia page. I was going to tell you and kind of surprise you on here. Say, look, you can look it up on your phone right now. But I think I've been banned from Wikipedia. I don't know. I did something wrong. I made them mad. They wrote me a mean email. So TBD. I'm gonna keep trying. But anyway.
Maybe it was me. Maybe my name just hit their database. So, oh yeah, let's remember this guy was red flagged years ago. But
anyway, I would like to be judged on the fact that I attempted to do it, at least good intentions rather than outcomes. But
very sweet gesture. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So since we already mentioned, growing up in the Fayetteville, North Carolina area, you want to talk some more about that, where you grew up, how you grew up?
Yeah. I'll breeze through it. My mom and dad were musicians. I was born in Jacksonville. We lived there about 6 months. We were relocated to Robeson County, Red Springs, North Carolina. Very country, very rural area, a lot of tobacco farms and trailer parks and, very simple country life. We lived in the middle of nowhere with a couple of my Aunt Alice and a few people lived around in this little compound, and we were like kids running around, all the good memories that you can have living in the country. Me and my brothers, running around, climbing trees, hunting animals and riding dirt bikes and playing, basketball, football, all the sports and on these dirt roads. And so, some really, really good memories. I call those the kind of the golden years. And then, my mom and dad were, like I said, were musicians. My dad was my hero. He was gone a lot. My mom kind of put her musical career on hold to raise the boys, my brother, my older brother, and my younger. And so they divorced. I was 8 years old. We kind of started renting houses, moving around. One of the first neighborhoods we lived in that's where I got introduced to rock and roll. A lot of the things we were listening to then. I was 8 years old, a lot of lullabies and just my dad's songs. I never really heard anything else outside of what my dad, his music and the campfire jams and stuff like that, which are great. But that's where, these new neighborhoods, these other kids, I learned about ELO and Queen. And we were at a bus stop and this guy pulls in the Trans Am. This really changed my life. That's why I bring this up a lot is this guy pulls in with a Trans Am and he's got I'm OG Trans Am with the bird on the hood. And he kind of, pulls into this parking spot really fast. He's listening to Back in Black, AC/DC. And I'm just like, oh my God, it just blew my mind. He's smoking a Marlboro Red. I'm like, oh, I want to be like that guy. And then, we spent about a year in that particular neighborhood and, learned about Kiss, did a little Panama show. We call it Panama, where you air guitar. We had these concerts and dressed up like Kiss and all these things. And, we just kind of went on from there. That was the first time I kind of embraced the culture of rock and roll. I never really picked an instrument up until I was about 9 or 10, and quickly fell into that naturally because my mom and dad were musicians. My older brother was falling into it. So we happened to move it beside what would be my childhood best friend, Joey Jakes, and his older brother, Mike Jakes. He had a band called Prisoner. My older brother joined that band, and it was just on. Like the culture, the garage band culture in North Carolina, in this particular little town, was off the chain. Drummers, you could hear drummers in the distance. You would hear a drummer playing in his garage. You would just walk up to it. Hey, you want to start a band? And when I say it was like concentrated with like garage band culture, it really was. It was a thriving era. Feel very lucky. A lot of people walking around with mullets and Iron Maiden shirts and Van Halen and Ozzy, and it was just an incredible time. So yeah, kind of grew up in that, started honing my skills as a musician, Once I realized I had a knack at it, I felt kind of out of place with typical sports school culture. Wasn't a jock, wasn't, super cool looking kid. I was just kind of this misfit, and I felt I like belonged in the music, and I had an edge within the music. And, at that time, my mom started dating some weird, not so good guys, a couple of them in particular. So I would just to get away from that, I would just fall into music. I would go hang out with my friends as long as I could and just really woodshed and just
I was going to say, you were a woodshed kid, right? Just
Oh,
sitting
yeah,
in the
man.
room,
Sitting in the room.
playing
I was
along.
Yeah, I played drums first, guitar. I played guitar because my mom couldn't afford a drum set, so she got me a guitar instead. My dad played guitar, so there was that connection. And my brother played bass, and it was just off to pursue the musical dream after that. And
Was there a particular player that was your favorite or that you mimicked the most?
I get asked that question a lot, and I know obviously there's my dad, but my dad was a singer-songwriter. He was a good guitar player as far as feel and all that. He wasn't like a shred, virtuoso guy. He was more of a song guy. So I never looked at him like that. The first time I ever heard really like a guitar player or a musician for that matter, that really freaked me out is when I actually bought the Ozzy Diary of a Madman album for my buddy Joey. And I remember listening to the guitar and Randy Rhoads, and I've never really credited Randy Rhoads, but as that guy.
Yeah.
But he really was, now that I think about, as far as listening to the solos and the classical, I always gravitated to the note choices of classical, the sadness
Yeah.
in classical music. And anytime there were minor songs, I didn't know as a kid that anytime I heard these minor changes, I'm like, oh my God, this makes my heart hurt. So Randy obviously had that ability to really, pull at those heartstrings from the minor perspective. So yeah, probably Randy Rhoads was, and that was when I was like, wow, there's a really another level that my dad doesn't even understand yet.
How were you when Still Rain started?
Still Rain started, I was still in high school, Douglas Byrd, sons of bitches. No. And I was there. Absolutely not a very rock and roll, like musicians were definitely not celebrated. So I'm not surprised to not have a mention there, but I was a junior. I take that back. I was a sophomore and I met a couple of the guys that would become Still Rain. We were in this other band called Satin Dagger. And, which was incredible. Which was my older brother and, this guy, Troy, and this other guy, the drummer, Bevan. So anyway, we met
all of these people have gone on to great success.
Yeah, they've all done really well. Which is crazy. There's a bunch of Fayetteville musicians that have done a lot of really good things. Jimmy Herring is one of the best guitar players in the world. Anyway, long story short, Still Rain. I was still in high school. I was the youngest in the band. They wanted to go tours. A couple of the guys left and joined this cover band, and they were touring, and me and my brother stayed together and formed this other band. And once we combined powers again, they were wanting to go on the road. I was still in high school, so I found a loophole to graduate from high school early. I went to summer school after my junior year to get my last English credit. I had to write a letter to my principal stating why I wanted to graduate early. And I remember the letter being so grammar-wise, it was probably the hugest red flag for me to leave high school earlier. It was just like a caveman wrote it. But I was like, I like music. I want to go rock and roll. Okay, but I did. I went and found this little, I just wanted out of the high school so bad. I felt like I was ready to go and join my people. And I was on tour. I graduated that summer of 89, which I was supposed to graduate in 90, skip my senior year. we were on tour the day after Christmas, 1989.
Wow. And you were doing regional, like, East Coast tours or?
Yeah. There was a big cover band circuit back then, ran by a booking agency called Showtime, and they would book bands, and we'd play 4 or 5 nights a week, and 4 hours a night, three 1-hour sets or 4 45-minute sets every night.
Couple sets of one set of originals, a couple sets of covers.
Yeah. Well, we graduated to that, and we actually became one of the first cover bands to become an original band on a cover band circuit, which was very unique for that era.
And our, excuse me, here in North Louisiana where I grew up, there was the same circuit, but with, here it was Pantera, Razor White, which was Philip's band before he joined Pantera. They stole him out of Razor White, and there was another band called Dark August. They were, the regional acts here, and Pantera was the one that made it out.
Yeah.
But the thing about looking at the artists, the players that came out of all those bands, they had chops. You had to. You're playing, 3 or 4 sets, 4 or 5 nights a week, and then when you kind of look at that versus the bands that were coming out 10 years later, not that there aren't some great players there, but there's a lot more monkey riffs, so to speak, just kind of caveman music of guys that didn't have that years of, playing that many sets and everything.
It's a slippery slope because the cover band years to me was the fraternity. That was the college, musical performance college. Some bands, I was talking to a young artist the other day about the slippery slope of being stuck in there, the comfortability of playing covers. You can make a little money playing music, but you need to really try to become your own band, your own artist. And some bands get stuck in the comfortability of cover band revenue that they don't take that risk and become that original act.
Yeah. So that was the extent of your touring before Sdust was Still Rain?
Yeah, I jumped ship to Sdust in 19.
What year?
It was 1994. Maybe it was 94, 95. Yeah, it was 94. It was actually Thanksgiving 1994. I actually made the official jump and moved to Atlanta, Georgia with Morgan.
Oh, Morgan. Oh, you went.
Yeah.
You moved in with Morgan.
Moved in with him, yeah.
Gotcha. And they were crawl space at the time, right?
Yeah, they were crawl space. Real rough around the edges, real raw, heavy, just really cool, unique band with LeJean had his own thing, and his contrast to what they were doing were great. And plus, I was a huge Morgan fan, so
yeah.
The
story of how you guys ended up getting signed. You were playing a gig, and you want to tell that story just about were you guys playing at a private party in a strip club or something, or am I totally
No,
making that
it's
up?
that's like a hybrid of what happened. So
Okay.
there was a thing, it was a radio convention that was held every year. I forget what the name of it was. Oh, I always remember. Anyway, this would move to different cities every year. It happened to be in Atlanta. Labels would meet in these conventions and listen to the newest bands, all this. Anyway, TVT was there. They were on their way to an after party at a strip club and accidentally happened to show up at this place called the Rec Room, which was an old dingy rock club in Atlanta, Georgia, but really cool. And we actually rehearsed there as well. Had a show there. They saw it was the first few shows I ever played with them were really rough. Like equipment broke down all the time, but we played and got through this show. It was like our third show ever, and they were there. And that's where we made the connection with someone. Her name was Sudi, and she passed our demos along. We had the cassette tapes and took it up to TVT, and then they started reaching out to us. And that was how we met with them for sure.
And the first record was done in what, 97?
It was 96 because it was during the Olympics. The Olympics were being hosted in Atlanta, Georgia, and we recorded at Triclops. Right after Matchbox 20 did their first record, we went in the same studio and did ours.
Wow. And the touring cycle for y'all's first record was absurd, the amount of shows. I remember, because that's when I joined you guys, about halfway through that cycle. And I remember Billboard magazine, which was still, pretty a big deal back then. I don't know if TVT ran it or Billboard did, but you guys did more shows than any other national. Like, they had inside the cover, like 2-page with the listing of whatever 350 shows or something that were done on that first record. It was absurd. Back in the day, that's what you did. You put out a record and you just went and toured, and and that's when I joined you guys. I was actually on a tour in Europe with your brother and his band at the time. Corey's band, Stuck Mojo, was out with Life of Agony, who I was working for, and I was teching for both bands.
Yeah.
In stage managing, I was teching for your brother, and he started telling me week 1 or 2 of this, whatever, a million week European tour. They all felt like they were that long back then. He's like, my brother's band's fixing to blow up. You got to go to work for him. And then randomly, and I found out later, not even connected, was Dennis Brennan called me. And Dennis had just come to work for you guys, and I had toured with him when he was tour managing Snot. And they were out, did some shows with Life of Agony, and then had toured with you guys, and he started to work for you guys. And he called and was like, this band's about to blow up, and we got Ozfest, and we really need you. And so I agreed to do it. It was the longest day of my life. I think I looked it up last week. It was June 25th, I think, of 98, because I flew home. I did a show in Den Haag, Holland, loaded everything to come back to the States with Life of Agony, didn't even sleep, drove to Schiphol in Amsterdam, flew to New York, flew into JFK, had to get on a bus and go to Newark, flew from Newark back to Louisiana, was home for 1 day, and then flew to Rochester, New York, and met you guys on the Megadeth tour. And that's when I started with you guys, and it was leading up to, I think I had a week before Ozfest started. And I hear Halen in the background.
Yeah, there's my dog. Let me try to contain him. Go ahead, bud.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, yeah.
No.
He'll magically be quiet in about 2 seconds.
You have an app? You just boom.
No, it's a shock app. Hey, I just came up with $1 billion idea.
Yeah, you did.
Like,
I'll edit this part out so nobody steals the idea.
Yeah, exactly. Well, or I'll get completely canceled for animal cruelty.
Yeah, for animal cruelty.
I would never do that. Just for the record, I would never shock my dog.
But just to talk a little bit about Ozfest and how my first memory of you, because it was so chaotic. I came in right at the end of it. It was Megadeth, Sdust, Monster Magnet, I think that tour was. Ugh. And I came in to work for John on the other side of the stage. And when I got there, Skitch, who, if anybody's in the music business, Skitch, he's a monitor engineer, sound man. He was doing John's guitars. Yeah. He is not a guitar tech.
I totally forgot about that.
And previous to that, Dennis, who is now, I think, on the management team for Metallica and a bunch of other
he's doing
artists.
Great. Yeah.
He had done John's guitars. Again, not a guitar tech. And it was just, the situation was dire, I'll say. And I got to the venue right before you guys went on stage, got out of a cab, hadn't even met you guys. I knew Dennis, that was it. And I knew Skitch. And I walk in and see you guys play, and you destroyed this club, just leveled the place. I'm like, oh, that part's good, but the guitar sounds like shit.
Didn't we meet before that? Did we have lunch somewhere one time? Or Mexican?
I think you guys, I did meet you here in Shreveport. You came through and played an outdoor show, and
yes,
and I briefly talked to you, and I think said, I know your brother, whatever.
Yeah, and I remember that. I remember that actually.
But my first memory of really, is that coming out on Ozfest, and the next day we were at the Shed, the amphitheater in Hartford, Connecticut, and it was my first day to get my hands on John's rig, and when I opened up the back of it, he had a couple pieces of, effects, rack mounted effects, like 2 units, and then the amps. It was a really simple rig. And when I opened the back of it, it was like an explosion of spaghetti of like 100-foot instrument cables.
A disaster.
And
It was a
all
disaster.
I did, I'm telling you, all I did was pulled everything out and then looked at the signal flow, figured it out. I made, I think, 4 cables instead of, like 50 or 100-foot instrument cables. I replaced them with, 18-inch cables and plugged it up. Went and got John out of the dressing room, like, all right, let's start dialing this in. And he hit one chord and was like, holy shit, man, that sounds incredible. What'd you do?
Yeah.
I just took, 150 feet of cable out of the rig. That's all I did. So you guys were super impressed, thought I was some badass or something.
Yeah.
It was not the case. I was absolutely did the bare minimum and got accolades. But we went into Ozfest and we did a pre-production day, and I was also stage managing you guys, have been tasked with that responsibility. And we showed up for that pre-production day, and we as a crew all walk up on the loading dock, and Opie, who was the stage manager on Ozfest, walks straight up and he goes, which one of you's Brent? I was like, that's me. He goes, all right, you are Sdust as far as I'm concerned. You're the only one I talk to. Anything that goes sideways, it's you on the line.
That's why he was the best.
So it was a step up for me, but at the same time to kind of get in with you guys, as you really were at the time, just on the rise. First album, you're playing second on the bill on main stage Ozfest. And it was like heavy metal summer camp for 3 months. And I have all my stories and experiences of that summer. And I'll tell one and then shut up. But the first memory I have of you that has stayed with me coming to work was day 2 of Ozfest. We did 2 nights in New Jersey and Homedale. And I think we were done at like 4:30. We had loaded the trailer, and I was walking up, out the loading dock. There was a little ramp up each side of the stage, and our bus was parked about halfway up the hill on the right side. And I was walking up to the bus to get my bag to go shower. And I hear you yelling at me from the bottom of the hill, and you're walking and you've got a guitar case in your hand, and you're like, there he is. Hey man, wait up, Brent. I'm like, what? And you're walking with Mikey Doling from Snot. You remember this?
No.
And you're like, as you're walking up, you're saying to Mikey, he can fix it, man. He can fix it. And I'm like, oh shit. And y'all set the guitar case down and open it up. And it was Mikey's like super nice Les Paul Standard, an old Honey Burst one. And he had thrown it. He liked to throw his guitar 20 feet in the air and catch it in the middle of their set. They played second stage, and it had hit the ground headstock first and snapped the headstock. And you've told him
first task,
yeah, you have convinced him I can fix this. And a very long story.
How did I know that?
I don't know. Well, I'll let you in on something. I didn't know I could fix it, and that's
I bet you did. I bet you did.
Well, the next day we had a day off in Boston. We were playing Mansfield, Massachusetts at the amphitheater there after a day off. And so I went and dug into the trailer and got some tools out. And this was before cell phones or Google to look up how to do something, So I don't know. It was probably a combination of pride and like having that little tinge of they believe that I can do this. So that gave me a little bit of confidence, which, separate from pride. But the only place I could find to get material was there was a mall across the highway from our hotel. And I went to Sears, went back when they had tool sections in Sears, and I found I was looking for glue, and the only thing I could find was epoxy, and it was engine block epoxy. Like when you mix the two liquids together, it turned like battleship gray. It was to repair it was to repair an engine block. So I went back to the room. I called a friend who owned a music store here in Shreveport. How the hell do I do this? He kind of gave me some half-ass instructions. And I got it glued back together and clamped up overnight and brought it back to him, put strings on it the next day, and he played it the rest of Ozfest. Mikey, if you ever hear this, I would love to know if that guitar still works, but you claimed, you told me later it stayed in better tune after than it did before. But
I was all about Mikey, man. The Snot Boys, they were great. Good. I mean, just a fantastic bond with those guys.
Yeah. But, and this is kind of a way to step into, another area. That tour for me, I know that I had a very different experience than you did on that tour.
Yeah.
At this point, there was, I'll just say that Sdust on Ozfest in 1998 was known as 24/7 Dust.
Oh, yeah.
The party never stopped, and we were all on one bus. And in contrast, I had been already sober and clean for, I think, was it 98? Almost 10 years at that time. And it was the first ever tour that I did where there were other people in recovery that I connected with. So I was having that experience of getting some recovery, time and getting that need
Fellowship.
some fellowship on tour.
Yeah.
But that was contrasted with living on the biggest party bus on the biggest heavy metal tour of the year.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
and so you were having a different experience than I was at that time. So how was that for you? That element of touring at that time?
It was like, we could go so deep down this hole together. We've had many conversations about it. It was a mix, now in my old age of, a lot of years of clear headspace. I kind of look back at things with a different lens, and it was, I that whole time was a mixture of rising success, ego, and imposter, insecurity syndrome. We never felt like the cool kids on those tours.
Yeah.
We felt like the lesser than version, but we were somehow getting in there, and we knew we were getting a good response, but it was never quite as good as the other bands in our eyes.
Yeah.
But so we tried to because of those, the way that I always coped with all those things was to dive into to have the courage and to be the boldest and to be crazy and to do all these things. Alcohol was it put me into a headspace I couldn't do it without drinking at that time. It was the way I coped with everything. It gave me the liquid courage. It gave me all these things. I was very scared of all of the stimulus of a tour like that level. I was a country boy out into this big wide world, and alcohol was my savior as far as diluting that, how real that was. I just kind of faded into it. So I was at all times so excited and then fearful at the whole thing while it was going on. So there was a constant battle within. But I mean, it was some really good times. I remember during that tour, that's when SoundScan was a big deal. And every week we would get the reports, and that was a morale lifter for the band, the crew, like, oh, we're actually doing this. And we had released this thing live and loud. The TVT, one of the really good marketing ideas they had were to do this infomercial, which basically showcased us. And, speaking of Dennis Brennan, he's featured in that, getting LeJean to
through the crowd,
stage dives and all this. But anyway, that was what kind of pushed us to the next level. And, it was a great time, man. Looking back at it, still didn't feel like, all I ever wanted was to be signed and be on big tours like that. I was there and I'm like, this was probably the last tour we'll ever do. They're going to figure us out and send us home.
Yeah.
And I'm not shitting you. That attitude and that fear is still there even after all these years. Like, we still man, I can't believe people are out there in the crowd, Yeah. And so it's funny how that works. But yeah, it was a good time. And I remember really being fond of you, and just, the sobriety thing seemed like such that you were doing that. It was just, I was like, how, why would you do that? And to be honest with you, a lot of those memories of early Brent, like when you were with us through all that, I didn't really retain because I was so self-absorbbed and into that life. So we were kind of on these different trajectories, even though we were together. But I do remember you being a kind, and very thoughtful and funny guy to be on tour with.
Yeah. Well, at least one of my big motivating factors to take the job with you guys is that I had always wanted to get in, some of my kind of mentors, as a guitar tech. The biggest one was Grady Champion from Pantera, and he had started with the band, and I wanted my Pantera. I wanted a band that I could get on I wasn't on totally at ground level with you guys, but to get on super early and do the whole ride.
It pretty much was. I mean, that was the beginning.
I went from, halfway through that first album cycle, all the way through Seasons, the fifth album. And I was gone for a chunk when my oldest daughter was born, when Logan was born during the Home record. So I missed most of the touring of Home. But other than that, I took the whole ride. And, there's a whole story for another day, another episode or whatever, about how I ended up getting into being a guitar tech. But, in the back of my head, being sober before I even started it, finding recovery before I even started, I had said to people, this is a great opportunity. You may be the only, sober person some of these people see. You get to be an example of recovery behind a door that, not a lot of people in recovery are in. So that kept me accountable in a way, that held in, at least internally, that helped the checks and balances of me personally to keep me, aware that I'm representing something here, and recovery works on a model of attraction, not promotion. And so I was always careful I didn't, beat the book about it or anything. I tried to be what was attractive about being sober. And, I know now over the years from other people telling me that I succeeded sometimes in doing that. I know there were times I was also a bad example, and, but it was a great opportunity that I took really seriously. So, but I will say that my years with you guys really put me to the test.
Oh,
at
man.
times.
I'm sitting there thinking about it. It's like, talk about being in the belly of the beast. I think about it a lot within my sobriety, and we've had conversations about that. And that's the thing. It's like to hear, and there were some of these stories you would share with me, and it was like really triggering, and it really got me defensive, and really like, man, was I that bad? Like you get this, we have this unique ability and opportunity to like look back at our life, and I think about that all the time, and how that's just the oddity of our career, that you were this one soul sober guy floating around on that insanity of a bus through arguably, no question about it, the darkest years of our using and drinking.
Yeah.
So you were there, and it's just wild. And if that's a testimony to, if anyone can stay sober and not join that, can't beat them, join them. You never did, man. It was an amazing feat and huge beacon of light for me.
Well, there's the other side of that too, that there's also, at least from my point of view, there was gratitude in it, because, I saw the partying. I did see the part that could have been considered attractive,
Yeah.
But more often than not, what I saw was the darkness that surrounded it, and the fallout and the consequences, and I would be up ready to start work at, 8:00 in the morning, having coffee, and there were dudes that were still up and just about to go to bed.
I was definitely one of those. Yeah.
And there was darkness. There was the cloud, the darkness surrounding them. And that made it easier for me at times. It wasn't, I was not saying I didn't lay in the bunk ready to murder somebody because Judas Priest was playing on 180 decibels, blasting out of the front lounge. And, you're trying to, you just worked 16 hours. You got to sleep because you got to work 16 hours tomorrow.
It's rock and roll, man.
Woo!
Yeah.
And
Shut up.
But anyhow, and in addition to that, just in my time with you guys, when you spend, and again, you guys toured like beasts. It never stopped. So when you spend upwards of 250 days together, you not only become family, good, bad, or indifferent, whether you love the personalities or not, you figure it out just like you do with family. But we went through an incredible amount of life change. I remember 9/11. That happened for me with you guys. We were in Manhattan. You guys were doing a photo shoot for, I think it was Animosity was about to come out. Was it Animosity?
2000. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the tent we had left the day before. And you guys had done a photo shoot that day before we left in Lower Manhattan with the towers in the background. You didn't use the photo, obviously. And we wake up the next morning pulling into somewhere in nowhere, Wisconsin at a hotel and get the news. Pool. Yeah, with drowning pool. Yeah. And, there were other things, going through the loss of Lynn from snot. I remember finding out in North Carolina, we were in Fayetteville. Yeah. Night, right. And having Dennis and I walking in and them telling you guys right before we went on stage that night, the same thing with Dime. I was with you guys, and me and Eddie, Eddie Gowan, tour manager at the time, he was like, I don't want to go in. And I came in and, talked to you guys because I had gotten, word. During your set, I found out. Yeah. And LJ's brother, we went through, you go through loss with people, and we experienced a lot of that together. And I'm not going to go as far as saying trauma bonding or whatever term, because I don't want to make light of trauma, but when you experience life with someone, like I said, whether it's your BFF or not, that experience, that matters. There's a bond that happens there.
I think when you spend that much time with someone, and this is what I've found more interesting rather than the rock and roll war stories, is that exact thing you're talking about. Like how, when you spend that much time, if you are getting along with someone or not getting along with it, you go through waves where there's certain people you get along with, there's certain seasons of life where you're like, you relate to this particular person more than the other. And there's so many case studies psychologically that could happen within the touring environment, and what happens in like any kind of trauma or tough situation you survive together or you go through together. There's a bond that is created it's hard to describe unless you spend that much time. And people that work together every single day, it's different because you go home at night and you have these little breaks. When you're continually with someone, realizing your dream, and dealing with all these emotions together, there was a lot of parties and there was a lot of things, but a lot of those times early on before it progressed for me to a bad place, there was a lot of truth serum in that alcohol. There was a lot of emotional breakthroughs that happened where we were telling each other these deepest, darkest secrets. And those moments were powerful, man. Those bonds. I mean, there's things that I've shared with that particular group of guys, you included, that were deep and meaningful. And it wasn't just because we were drunk. We were actually sharing our feelings with each other, And there would be times I go really far, and the next day it'd be hard to have eye contact with somebody. Yeah. It's like, I didn't mean to tell you about that particular secret, but it is. It's a unique. That's really the legacy of it to me. Is I survived and made this living playing music with these guys in this metal tube, and we didn't kill each other, and we still have the original, Five Horsemen, and
how many years now?
Shoot, we're coming up on 30 years.
On 30, man. Right? Because I started with you guys this June will be 26 years ago. That's
96 will be, or 2026 will be 30 years.
Okay. So when I ended up leaving you guys in, I think it was '04, in the spring of '04, we were done with the Seasons album cycle. I know that you were just starting to kind of find a bottom at that time, because right when I left is when I believe you took a hiatus from the band for a little bit, or at least, missed a little bit of time. And you want to talk at all about like kind of what it was like finding a bottom for you and that process, or how long it took, as much or as little as you want to talk about it, up to you.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom was a crucial part of the journey. Very necessary. The gift of desperation, all those things that you hear. My first experience of attempting sobriety, I guess I should hit the bottom first. The bottoms were the consequences, the volatile, blackout drunks where I was attacking band members, like, being around a bunch of people that drank a lot and being the guy that had the problem among that crowd was a very eye-opening experience because I was the worst of the worst. So there were those kind of small realizations, those realities that were kicking in, like, man, you might have a problem with this, like a real problem. And then it just kept becoming that denial. Maybe I don't, let me try it this way. And then inevitably, no matter what I tried, however I tried to manage my drinking and drugging, I always ended up in that really hot seat, and with my band members, with my wife at the time. And so it was some of the natural bottoms, and then it just got darker and darker. And then it was, I managed a year of sobriety at one point, and that's when I actually started communicating with you and actual recovery relationship. And I got a hernia. Never had taken pain pills before in my life, and had a bottle of them. I took a few after my hernia, and I was all good. And then we did the Seasons record, and I had this great, brilliant idea of taking a couple of these Percocet to Lollapalooza, and just said, I'll take these as a kind of a social lubricant. And that was my entrance gateway into pills. And then shortly after that, when I couldn't find the pills I wanted, because I didn't think that was losing my sobriety at the time. I thought I'm just taking a couple pain pills to sleep and relax, but ended up not getting pills, falling back into drinking in Australia. Then I was the pill junkie and an alcoholic and all the things all at once, which kind of really pushed me into a dark place. And then it just kind of consequence after consequence, a couple attempts at rehab, and left the band, tried to change the band, joined a band with my brother in Dark New Day. And it was fantastic band, great opportunity. Could have been a really big situation, but I took the problem with me to Dark New Day, which was me. And continued on, which was really dumbfounded because there was all this support, like, you're going to join this new band, have this new chapter, and everyone, you're going to not drink, and it's going to be their problem and not you. And then I ended up drinking. I'm like, oh shit, this is a real problem. And I was drinking while I was on, and not to go into those kind of war stories, but ended up getting a gig with Korn out of a fourth or fifth attempt at getting sober. I had a little bit of time. They called me. I would always get this little bit of sobriety, and these little lights would come back on. God would open these doors for me, and I would just piss all over them. And Korn was the final one. And just to kind of end here, I was with Korn for about 10 months. Had a rough couple of incidents, that a lot of warnings for those guys. They were fantastic to me when I was with them. Ended up getting sent home by them, and then got sober. And I give Korn credit, whether they did it just to save their own ass, or if them sending me home was the final thing that just kind of pushed me straight in. I had a few days after they sent me home of really just drinking myself into oblivion because the pain was so deep. I got divorced, immediately just lost everything, lost my Dark New Day thing, lost the Sdust, or, everything was already gone. Went into treatment and been sober ever since. That was October 24th, 2007.
That's fantastic. So, how long before you were ready to go back to the road and to touring?
Yeah, I was talking to Morgan about this like a month ago, and I was about 6 months sober. I'd had this little apartment, one of the first apartments I ever lived in Louisville, Kentucky. That's where I got sober, and it was a treatment center down the street called Timbrook. And I was there and did my 30 days. Then I got this tiny little apartment, had no money, used a credit card, somehow got a credit card. And I was doing aftercare. I stayed there about 6 months. I was doing 2 meetings a day. I was roofing houses with my buddy Jeff and totally ready to not tour again. I'm like, this is cool. I'm okay. I was literally doing a day at a time. That headspace, I was submersed into that, and I was finally getting traction with that because I was finding joy, and I wasn't worried about. I mean, I was still learning, but I had a foundation, right?
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved it because it was. I got through. There's a lot of painful things. I put a lot of people through a tremendous amount of pain, but I was healing, and there was a lot of amazing support there. Some of the men in Louisville, Kentucky, just really huge supporters and men that really are true examples of what the recovery can be. And I just started building, and I got a call from Morgan. Me and Morgan were just getting friendships back together. You know, I guess I was in an amends stage of my recovery, and he was along that list, and I just connected with him on a friendship level, and I wanted to reconnect with those guys. And then we started the conversations probably a little prematurely about getting back together because we missed each other. And I talked to my support team in Louisville, and they were like, if you're ready, we're not going to stop you. We don't think it's a great idea, but you do have a foundation. It was a little early, and it was a huge risk in that, being 7 months, but I never wavered. I was on the road doing meetings every day, and I was all in still. And I remember was Sonny Mayo actually had replaced me while I was gone at Sdust. He was sober. He did it. And I'm like, it's not the band. It's not that you can be sober. Brent did it. Sonny did it. Y'all are the two examples.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like I had these people, like you said, that had faith in me, and I had faith in myself, and I was just into it. I loved that. There was one particular day, and I'll stop here, but everyone always said the desire to drink will be lifted. And I'm like, I'll never believe that. Never. I was in this cooler in the bus and just super happy to be in the band, just like grateful, just felt good. Went down to I wanted a Diet Coke, and there was this cooler full of beer in the front lounge. Like, I'm talking Miller Lite commercial beer, like freezing cold, like all the beauty that a good cold beer is, summer day in Florida. And I want a Diet Coke, and at the bottom of the cooler, I dig this Diet Coke out, and I pop it, and I don't think anything about it after I'm digging through this, my beer of choice at the time, And I actually like shed a tear, man. I was sitting on the couch, and I did not have the desire to crack one of those beers open at all. Like, honestly, in my core, I didn't think about it. And I was like, all you wanted was that Diet Coke, man. You might be getting sober. Like, you might be getting this. And then was that momentum. You want to keep it, and the power that I got by doing that. I don't recommend anybody early on sobriety digging through a cooler full of beer, but that was my situation.
Yeah.
And it gave me belief in my higher power, gave me belief in what these people were telling me at the time. And I was like, oh shit, I can do this. And I did, day at a time.
My moment, because I think pretty much everybody in recovery has that moment if they stick around. I was driving down a road here in my hometown and just was sitting in traffic, and I looked up and there was a billboard, and it was a Miller Lite billboard. It was a bunch of Miller Lite ponies sitting in ice. It was the middle of summer in Louisiana. And I was sitting kind of mindlessly staring at it, not paying attention. And then all of a sudden I realized what I was looking at. And all at once, this feeling washed over me of, I haven't thought it was like 6 p.m. I was headed to a meeting, I think. And I just had the thought of, I haven't had a single thought today to pick up a drink or anything else.
Yeah.
And the gratitude that I was filled with, because you could not have convinced me when I was in active addiction that was possible.
Yeah.
The obsession was so strong and so consuming that I didn't even think that was something that I could achieve that. And so that's
Unless you are a true alcoholic and have that. I mean, there's people that think about alcohol a lot and
Yeah.
do it, but the way that we look at still when I look at alcohol, my wife won't finish a glass of wine. I'm like, why would you not finish that? Like, why in the hell would you not? You know, and that's my mind still operates like that. And
Yeah,
it's like
still.
she's like, because I'm done. I'm like, you are?
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
And I have the same. My wife doesn't drink. She's not, doesn't have the problem. But when we got together, she's like, I'm not going to drink anymore. And she just stopped drinking. But in conversation, I still don't think she understands. And she's a clinical psychologist. I mean, she trained with people, in recovery and the disease and everything else. And I'm like, I just don't think you understand what would happen if I pick up.
Yeah.
You will not be married. Excuse me, to this. This dude will leave and there's another guy that shows up that is way not as cool
Yeah.
at all. So I know that for me coming out to see you guys after you rejoined Sdust, I know there was a period, and I think we talked about it then, where like I remember the day, I can't remember where the show was, but I came alone and met you outside the bus and, greeted each other or whatever. And we go in and you're like, it's not too long until showtime. And you were the only person on the bus and you had the vacuum out and all the cleaning supplies and you are like legit detailing the whole inside of the bus. And you're like, I do this every night. And you talked about it as a living amends, to these guys. And I know that you went through a pretty long period of that.
I still do it.
Yeah, I know. And just the whole, and for me, maybe kind of tie this part of it up with this, but having the experience of seeing you before you hit bottom and along the way as you found that bottom, I have learned to never rule anybody out that, oh man, maybe this guy is just never going to figure it out. He's never going to get the gift of desperation enough. Mm-hmm. But in my mind, I'm not going to say I'd given up on you, but there was not a lot of hope,
No.
And I loved you back then. I loved you a lot. And I kind of had to learn those boundaries we have to learn with, I can't, you don't have any control about what somebody else does. And I wanted you to find it so bad, but it was a great lesson for me that, we just don't have any control over that. And so having the experience of seeing you at that extreme and then to show up, in that first year or so you were back with them and we were in communication as well. And then till now, it's one of the greatest transformations I have seen in my 35 years, in recovery. And so I just want to, say that here, that it is one of the biggest gifts for me of being in active recovery is to see the literal miracles that happen around you. And there are times that you have been a great inspiration to me, because I don't care how long it's been since you picked up a drink or a drug. My head's still crazy, mm-hmm. and I still do dumb shit all the time. And I still have terrible thinking a lot of the time. My brain still tries to attack me on a daily basis. And you have been a great example of, what to do in recovery, how to be as a husband and a father and an employee and all the things that you are. I have gotten to watch you do, and I'm proud of you, but I'm also, I'm grateful that you're in my life, that I've gotten to see you be all these things and what you become now. It's pretty cool, man.
Oh man, see, I'm not gonna cry, but I wanted so badly to be on this side of it with you, and to have a really long chapter, day at a time, of course,
Yeah.
with you on this other side, to have a relationship. You've been through tremendous things in your life, huge struggles. And that's the thing. A lot of people, can stop drinking and still have a pretty, like, very insane life. And you get some, I thought it was like a gong.
No,
like,
sorry. That was a
done.
great time to hit the mic stand. Sorry.
No, but like, not to get too into it, because again, we could do a whole thing about that. But I used to be like, all right, yeah, he quit drinking and he did these things, but how does he handle life? Because a lot of people were like, they quit and they were judgmental and they were just hard to be around, irritable, and like just miserable people. And you had these curveballs, without getting in detail, things of life, like life on life's terms, hard, hit you in the soul.
Yeah.
I mean, a life attack attacked you, and you handled it with grace and thought, and you collaborated with other people, and you didn't take it on alone, but you looked like you did. And, it was just really, really, really cool to watch as well. You are to me, like the longest relationship as far as, the original one that inspired me. And then we've had these times where we lose touch, we get back in touch, and then nothing changes. It's the same connection. It's there, and it's stronger, and in certain ways. And yeah,
if nothing else comes of this, it's getting, I'm so happy to have conversations with people that, we're all busy and we all have our own lives and are, got our own stuff going on. And it just is that it's just the way life is. But to have the opportunity whenever we get to, and it's this way with me with some other people as well, when you just get to pick up and have it's like you never missed a beat, and and the older that I get, and I think COVID, going through the whole pandemic, everybody's world got really small, at least mine did. And I have toddlers, so that makes your world super small. Like it's circle the wagons. Yeah. It's us in this house.
Survive.
And there's not a lot of contact with other adults unless I'm working. And, I have just continued to get more grateful for the friendships I've had over the years. And I remember a guy telling me in a conversation, a guy in recovery really early on, he was trying to explain his concept of his understanding of gratitude to me. And he goes, all you got to do, he's this old redneck, is go out there and look at my truck in the parking lot. And he goes, if it's dirty as hell and there's a bunch of garbage in the back of it, and you look in the front, there's a bunch of McDonald's bags and shit spilled everywhere, I'm not very grateful for it today. But if you go out there and look at it and it's clean and it's running good and there's not smoke billowing out of it, that means I'm taking care of it and I'm grateful for it. And that idea that's the way I feel about my friendships and the relationships and the connections that I've made. If I'm grateful for something, I show that in my actions, So that trying to keep connection, and even you and I know over the years, there's periods where we've gone dark, or, and then one of us will extend a little, a text. Yeah. Hey man, how are you? And at least for me, I'll share one other. This is a very significant conversation that happened in my life when I was probably 21 or 22 years old. I was 3 or 4 years clean. And, I was a child of divorce. I'm from West Virginia, and my parents divorced when I was 7, close to the age of you. And I moved to Louisiana with my mom. And as I got clean, I was trying to rebuild this relationship with my dad just because I didn't grow up with him. And I had made whatever attempt or, extended whatever communication to him, and I didn't get the response that I wanted. I had expectations and they weren't met. And I was super disappointed, and I went total, Chicken Little, and was like, well, the hell with it. I'm just not going to try anymore. I guess I'm not supposed to have a relationship with my dad. And I was talking to a guy about it, and he listened to me bitch and moan about the whole situation. And at the end of it, he just looked at me and he said, do you want to have a relationship with your dad? And I said, yeah. Like, what have we been talking about this whole time? And he's like, then why don't you just concentrate on being a good son? Just try to be a good son and get out of the results business. And so that, to me, that's how I keep any relationship. I just try to be a good friend, or try to be a good dad, or a good, in that case with him, a good son. So over the years touring, have you, how have you learned in this new part, the sober part of your life, in touring, to try to find more balance, more work-life balance, and also how to, and I ask this because it's taken me into my 40s, and now I'm 51, we're the same age, to start, or, within a year, to start learning how to set some boundaries in your life, and learning how to advocate for, I don't want to do 200 shows a year, I'm thinking 75 or whatever. How do we make this work? How has that transition been? Because I know that you have gotten a lot better about taking care of you and having a healthier approach to touring.
Yeah, I mean, that topic has been all encompassing for the last few years, and I guess the thing that really happened eventually, becoming a father was a huge shift in the dynamic of my life, my personal life. I saw all the guys in the band have kids, and they were away for birthdays and just a brutal schedule, and missed a ton of the kids' life. They're a lot of the guys. LeJean's got new, young kids now, but I saw that when I had the kids, it changed. My priorities started shifting. I was really ready to have kids. I had toured. It was so ingrained in me to tour. I was so comfortable touring for so many years that I didn't know any better. I thought that was just how you did it. You were a work mule. You went out, and I was comfortable there. I was never super comfortable at home until I had kids. And then I was so engulfed in their lives. And once they started becoming these little human beings, and the connections that you make as a parent, a really engaged parent, I was, every moment I was missing, because my father was gone a lot. He was touring. There was no FaceTime. There was payphones. I called him every 3 weeks. I'd hear a little distorted voice on the other line, 6-7 weeks at a time, pretty much all year round. And so I didn't have an emotional connection with my dad. We really tried. He tried, when he would come to see me play shows, and I didn't have it. And I hate that I wasn't capable in some of those years of accepting his attempts. But, so knowing how I did not want my kids to be emotionally unavailable to me, or me to be to them, I just really started saying, okay. And I was looking at the internal family of Sdust, like our relationships, and how, we're still together. Okay. How do we stay together? How do we start finding, and before we never had managements that cared, or labels that gave a shit about anything about our lives. And we finally got in the position with the guy that we're with now that we're like, okay, well, we have a little bit of say now. So instead of us grinding and just doing this, let's try some different things. I started trying to push a 3-week tour model. We'll do 3 weeks. I have to have a light at the end of the tunnel. I have to be able to connect with my family on a consistent basis. I can't be away for 5 or 7 weeks away. It's not natural. So some of those boundaries you were speaking of, I was pushing on some of the guys. And I came to a point where the guys, I'm like, you know what? You guys have my blessing to do more, but here's where my threshold ends. And this is where I'm like looking at my kids and seeing some of the effects of being gone. Cause I did a 7-week tour with Seether in the summer. And I came home from that tour as the last time I will ever do a tour that long away from my children. It will just not happen.
Yeah.
And that kind of like started it. And then, having a bunch of good conversations with Morgan and now a couple of the other guys, we have shrunk. We were looking at all the tour dates that we did from the beginning to today. They're all logged, and the manager's showing to him. And what we play now is a fourth of what we used to do.
Yeah.
And we're making a living, and our internal relationships aren't so strained because let's face it, you get older, you're around each other, everyone's stuck in their ways. We know we have the art of coexisting down, but we don't like to press that too much. We don't want to be in each other's crosshairs too much because sometimes you can have one of those bad days and say something that puts that scar on your relationship. It's really difficult to get over it. And it's not a thing you mean it to happen. It just happens emotionally. And then pride and ego, and everyone's in different places in their lives. So I was like, I don't want to say I was smart, but I was like, you know what? I want to preserve this. I want because my relationships with that band are very important. They're very family oriented, and I don't want to burn out our relationship because of overexposure, you know? So we figured that out. We know when at 3 weeks, we're just like done. Yep. 2 weeks really. And that's just where it is. And, we're on our way of, you know, and I don't tell a lot of people this, but we are on our way of actually shutting this thing down. At some point over the next few years, we are going to, you know, get into a situation where the touring was going to come.
Yeah. You have to have there has to be an eventual off ramp.
And we want to be in control of that. And our fans we adore our Sdust fans are incredible, and they are our bosses in a lot of ways. Yeah. But I think they would understand too. It's like I don't want a couple guys to fall off and there to be this like one version of Sdust and two, you know, like all these. Yeah. I want us to walk away with dignity and our relationships intact. That would be the best way to end this whole journey. As, hey guys, that was awesome. 30 years later, man, we had a great run. You know, I love you. And maybe we do another show. Maybe we come back out of hibernation and do something for nostalgic reasons. But if you don't have those relationships intact, then how many bands actually stay together the course of a long career? It's very limited, you know? So we have this.
Yeah, you're a unicorn. I mean, I've told people that aren't in the business, I've tried to explain with you guys. I did, in the time I worked with you, because I have them all logged, I did 986 shows for you guys. There are hugely established bands that are household names that haven't done that number of shows in a career.
Absolutely.
And that's just what I did as an employee with you guys during parts of most of 5 album cycles. Yeah. And you guys have continued for another 15, 16 years since then. Yeah. So the fact that you guys are still able to go out there at the age that, you know, at the golden age and play this music that is as aggressive as it is and not kill each other and have love for each other is a testament to, you know, growth along the way and an ability to manage those relationships. Yeah.
Control and ego, pride. I realized not in the beginning of my sobriety, but probably toward the end, the last few years, that the world doesn't revolve around what I like or my preferences. Yeah. My preference settings are not everyone else's. No. And when I really truly understood that, my life was better.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I'm like, hey, dude, yeah, they're living their own little life movie, and you're not the star of that. You know, you're just
you might not even be a background artist.
No, you're the villain in that.
Yeah.
But you know, and that's like, it's just like, okay, it's a mutual respect, and there's days where that goes out the window, you know, but that's when we shut the tour down. You know,
Yep.
it's like, I don't like that guy. Okay, he's gone. You
It's
know?
knowing your limitations as
Yeah.
well, just knowing what works and what doesn't. A couple of kind of loose, fun questions before we start winding it up. Are as far as was there a single show in your career that you had the moment of, holy shit, I've made it, or this is, the awe and shock and awe moment of, look at this is incredible.
You know what, man? I thought about it, you know, and everyone always throws the Woodstock thing. Like, you know, we were just a band that was around at the time, the Woodstock. That event was not there for us.
Yeah.
So we're a part of this thing. So I don't really look at Woodstock as that was when we made it, because every band in our genre that was at the level we were at was there.
Yeah.
It wasn't like you got invited to the super cool party. Well, it was, but it wasn't us. It wasn't on our merit alone. I think it would have been one of the shows that were probably obscure in the middle of nowhere, where there was a tremendous amount of people in a club just for us, packed, singing words. It was within those early years, maybe second record, maybe even third record, where like it is, I would say more of like Animosity third record, because that where the fluke was it was beyond the fluke.
Yeah.
It wasn't we just had a lucky first record or second record.
It was happening consistently.
Yeah, and I think that there were realizations during then, no one's going to come take this away. If we go away tomorrow, we still left an imprint. Yeah. So I think it was within those. It wasn't a particular show, but probably a little particular era where I was like, damn, like this is us. You know, people come see this band, and they will continue to see this band. And that was the goal. And, you know, we didn't appreciate it. I appreciate it way more now than I did back then. I'm like looking back. Now when people come and I see them now, I'm like, oh, man, they're still here. Yeah. And I can see their faces, and, you know, it's great.
Was there a performance of another band at any point? And not just to give an example, I've had, over the years, I had those moments of getting to see a band and being completely blown away. Like, yes. I remember the first night of Ozfest, you and I and John walked out to front of house and stood behind their front of house engineer and watched Tool opening night of Ozfest. And I looked over at you. They were a minute into the first song, and I looked at you. I had chill bumps on my chill bumps, and I had tears running down my face.
It was spiritual. The weather, remember, it was the dusk.
It was perfect.
Was turning to that dark, like, I'm getting chills thinking about it. And that's like what every 50, 40-year-old guy does about Tool.
Yeah. Well, we did it we did it in the 90s, man.
I loved them, and I swear I felt like I was right there with you, man. It was another level of connection, masses connecting.
Yeah.
But
it was perfect. But do you have other ones? I have a couple of others that are that's your hook. That's what keeps you coming back, both as a music fan and as a player. As for me, as a crew guy, what kept me engaged in my job was those moments. So what other ones did you have?
So my first arena concert I ever saw was Def Leppard and Crocus and Gary Moore. And I knew the second the lights went out, for Crocus, when the lights went out and the lighters came out, I said it to myself as a kid, like, I want this. Yeah. This is what I want. But it wasn't. I saw Nine Inch Nails at Madison Square Garden on the Downward Spiral tour. I was early 20s, 21, with my best friend Troy at the time. And that was the solidifier in, like, this is not only what I want to do, I want to do it like this. I was completely spiritually engulfed in what Trent was laying down that night and what that band was, the light show, the atmosphere, the New York attitude. I felt scared. I was like, oh, this is going to unravel. He's throwing stuff on stage. Like, it was just dark chaos, but a collective church of darkness. I don't even know how to describe it. I still look at it, and I actually have on VCR that actual show.
Wow.
Someone, Troy, sent it to me, and it just affected me in a way where I sometimes some people lose steam in their early 20s and they go and become a regular person in society. I saw the Nine Inch Nails. I'm like, no. I'm going all in. And I've never hit anywhere close to that level, but it was definitely something to shoot for.
Yeah. I had several others. One, I saw when Sabbath was first doing reunions, they were slated to headline the Ozfest in England, which was only a month or so before I came to work for you guys. And it was at Milton Keynes, and Ozfest was a single show.
Yeah.
Foo Fighters, Pantera. I was there with Life of Agony. And I met Tony's tech and got to go, Grady hooked me up with him, and I got to go sit with Tony's tech. And I didn't know until midway through the day that Bill Ward wasn't playing. He had had a mild heart attack several weeks before. So Vinny Appice was playing drums.
Yeah.
And at changeover, I get up there, and I'm like the only guy. I don't know how I got to be so lucky. I'm sitting on a road case in Tony's Guitar World right next to his tech. And during changeover, up walks Bill Ward and his wife, and they had chairs for him right in front of me. And he turns around and says, hi. We start talking. I tell him I'm in recovery. We're talking like recovery, and then the lights go dark.
That's too much.
And
I wouldn't be able to handle that.
Sabbath in front of 60,000 people in England, and I'm sitting with Bill Ward and Tony's tech. It was I cried through most of the show. I ever knew that.
I don't think you've ever. Maybe you told me the story. That's unbelievable.
I have pictures of it. Whit Crane was also kind of instrumental in getting me over there because he was singing for Life of Agony on that tour.
Yeah.
And
I remember.
He was real close with Sharon and Ozzy and the whole camp. So, and there's others, but not to get lost in the weeds of that. It kind of leads up to this question and that that moment of, I know for me, and I didn't get. I like any of us, I was like most crew guys, I'm a failed musician. I was playing in bands and got the opportunity to go on tour and be a tech and did it. So I kind of set aside those dreams early on in my career and decided, okay, I'm going to go this route and make a paycheck handing somebody else a guitar. That doesn't mean that I still didn't have that dream as well, and those moments that still are the hook that totally got me. So with that kind of dream and what you just described about like being at the Garden that night and seeing Trent and seeing them and knowing exactly what you wanted to do. When I first started, decided to do this podcast, I reached out to a couple other people that get interviewed a lot and said, is there a question that you never get asked that you wish you would? And our friend Mark told me this one. He's like, yeah, here. So I got to give Mark Morton credit because this is his question, but I think it's perfect for right now. So now that you have achieved the dream, so to speak, and you've gotten to live the dream, where has it met your expectations and where hasn't it? Like, where does it look like what you thought it would look like and where does it look different? And I think in a way we've covered a lot of that over this conversation, but is there anything in particular?
Damn, that's a good question.
Thank Mark.
Yeah, good job, Mark. I'm not surprised. Mark is super insightful guy. Where it's met my expectations, God, man, it's met my expectations. Well, first off, I'll lead with it wasn't what I thought it was going to be at all. when it does, it didn't, I grinded so many years before anything actually happened. It was so gradual. There was never oh shit, this
Yeah.
is taking off. It was a lot of grind. So there was almost a little bit of like, it's about time, young, cocky kind of attitude in the beginning. But it's met my expectations in a way beyond what I imagined. And that is a true connection with people in the audience. Like how important that is. It's not the praise or the yelling. It's the looking at each other, looking at these people and going to their cities multiple times and forming a relationship with them. And eventually kind of living your life in parallel with a group of people and them bringing their kids out. Like again, back to the connection piece, like that's what I never expected to be so in love with the people, the individuals. Like I know I have been lucky enough to really know someone's face, thousands of people that I know their face, and we have a connection and I know things about them and I've helped them in their own words, not mine. They share, and we do these VIP things where traditionally people that don't understand what this is, VIPs where people pay to meet these bands, right? Before or after the show. We get so many stories about people saying, man, this really saved my life. Like this has been a part of my life, the fabric of my life. Your music has been. So I never really anticipated that those connections. I thought it was a very superficial, like, yeah, people admire you, but it goes a little deeper. And we've had the unique opportunity of going to places many, many, many times over the years. So there's this new level and depth to our relationships with these people. And I'm so thankful to be aware of it and to be gracious. And one thing Seven Dust is good to our people, because that's just, they are the innocent in all this. That there are people that are rude and there are people that are weird and they say odd things to us, but it is a part of, like, man, that's just, they're human beings, we give them so much more patience and love because they deserve that. It's hard some days because we're not, everyone gets selfish and they want to do their own thing. But if you could just manage that, it's a kind of a long answer, but it was the connections with the real connections with so many people I didn't anticipate.
That's fantastic. It's not what I would have expected, but that's a great answer. What else do you want to go
It ain't the money, buddy.
It ain't the fucking
I mean, we do all right, but we ain't fucking, let's just be real.
Keep it real. What else do you want to go after in life? Like, you got, anything else? Any big dreams out there?
I would love to create music for film and TV and trailers and continue collaborating with people. I would love to learn more about the engineering side of this. I would love to consult bands and help young bands find a path a little easier than I did, be of service to them. But right now, the top priority is being a father and being there for my kids and my wife. And that is the biggest legacy, my biggest interest, that's everything.
It's everything.
It's everything. So everything is for them, now. And I love it. I love being a dad, man.
It truly is, and not to alienate anybody that's not a parent, but
no,
it is. It is what has gotten me out of bed a lot of mornings in my life, and
I've seen you be the father of all fathers, man. I never knew what that looked like. I never knew what you were a huge inspiration on being a father before I never imagined it. I never thought about shedding a tear over it. I never was a kid person, I never. So I I'm again so glad I get to be a father with you, so
Yeah.
we can share that, because that's really at the end of the day is like, yeah, the music thing was cool, but nah, it's everything.
And having the experience, I have 4 kids, and my girls are 24 and 19, and that sounds crazy to even say. I had, my first daughter working for you guys, and
Yeah.
and it happens so fast, and they grow up so fast, and you really get this window of about 12 years where they care to be around you at all, because once they kind of hit middle school, you're out. You're being phased out, and it's such a dark statement. But one of my mentors said to me, a great friend, when my oldest daughter was born, the day she was born, he came to the hospital to visit, and we're looking through the glass at Logan in the nursery, and he looked at me and he goes, "Enjoy it until she starts walking." And I just kind of looked at him, and he said, "Because once they start walking, every step they take is a step away from you."
I knew.
And I was
knew
like,
where I was going.
"What? How are you going to tell me that on the day my daughter's born?" So
That is
being so
absolutely true.
yeah. So like now my boys, because I have boys that are 5 and 3, they're getting a different dad than the girls had.
Yeah.
I am so much more, and without, it's hard to not get in the guilt of that and feel like I cheated my girls. I did the best I could every day along the way, and I have to live with and stand on that, and I'm proud of the dad I was to them. I think I did good with what I had at the time.
Yeah.
But my boys are getting a whole different version, because I'm 51 years old now. I know a lot more. I've experienced a lot more. And I'm also much more aware of how quickly this will be gone.
Yeah.
And it
You know
makes
what? Being a father in their 50s with young ones, that's a different set of challenges.
Oh, dude.
Because you're biologically like, I'm not really in my prime of my life to be chasing these kids around.
And I've got the boys now that want to, dive bomb and come off the top ropes, and it's getting punched in the nuts 42 times a day.
Yeah.
It's rough,
You were in the thick of it.
Yeah. So to go, we don't have time to get into the whole fitness thing, but that's why I work out. That's why I'm trying to keep such good care of
100%.
myself, is just to be able to have that part of that experience with them and not shortchange them because I eat like shit or I don't exercise, not shortchange my kids because of that. So
It's a hell of a motivator, especially when you can't do the things. You can't participate in life. Like right now, I'm nursing a couple elements we've talked about.
Again, we could do 5 hours.
I could do a 3-hour meniscus tear podcast. Thanks for having me on, brother.
Yeah, I'm going to throw a few things out kind of for fun here at the end, rapid fire. What movie or series are you most into, or do you have a favorite movie or TV series? Either that you've watched recently or something, a favorite.
Oh man, there's so many. I just love shows. What was the latest one? I just watched The Dynasty. I've been on a lot of sports documentaries because of my son and my daughter are really into that. Last Dance, all those things. I love all Star Wars, Marvel, but one of the, I guess, man, there's so many shows. Pretty much everything that's on Netflix I've watched, like with full zest, but nothing right now is on my current thing, but I've watched all the Breaking Bad. I actually went down to 6 Feet Under, thing.
That's a good one to go back and binge.
Yeah, it was a good one. I've seen everything though. So that's my, that
What
on
about,
tour.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
What about, are you listening to any podcasts right now? You have any in particular?
Yeah, I listen to Smartless for comic relief. They always have a good guest. That's who that is.
No,
Will Arnett.
Yeah.
And so I do the Huberman.
Huberman.
Yeah, that's an awesome one. Tim Ferriss. Joe Rogan, I'll listen to that.
These are all required middle-aged white guy
Absolutely,
podcasts.
yeah, absolutely, 100%. And then I do a couple curveball ones with some crime,
Yeah,
you know,
true crime stuff.
true crime, mystery solving, and stuff like that. My wife will turn me on to.
What is there any particular new music you're listening to?
I am all into soundtracks and score, and that's all I'm listening to right now. I literally listen to it when I work out. I listen to it when I'm driving around. Every now and then I'll throw in some old like rock stuff, 80s stuff. I've been kind of
Yeah.
back into that. Not just rock and glam metal, but like the Duran Durans, the Peter Gabriels and Police and a lot of those bands. Just nostalgic comes out of me. You know, and another thing is 70s soft pop. Like I just like some of those songs
solid
are
songwriting.
incredible, man. And so I've been back into that stuff. But yeah.
4 and 5 part harmony vocals. Everybody's singing. It's just, yeah.
God, it was great.
Big question. What's the best riff ever written? And why is it Lay It Down by Rat?
Hey,
That's
you know
solid.
what? I'm not even gonna lie, man. I really think that is, if not the first, it's
You used
probably
to play it all the time.
because it's the best riff.
It's
It
so
still
good.
is. We broke it down the other day and did this like super melodic version with the same chords, and it was like it's just as good.
Yeah.
I don't care what anyone says. I'll never forget where I was at when I heard it. It changed my life. Lay it
It
down.
changed
for
your
sure.
life. Mine's
Yeah.
probably National Acrobat, Black Sabbath. It does it all for me.
Yeah.
Well, my last question I had written down, because this is something we say with our kids. I think you've kind of already answered this, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. If one of us, you know, Lisette or my wife or I, does something that makes the kids really happy, Patty, our oldest boy, started saying, "That really made my heart smile," like, and just like that made me really happy.
He says that?
Oh yeah, both the boys do. And so, what makes Clint's heart smile?
Oh man, I said no question. When my kids smile,
Yeah.
when my kids smile, and when my dog, his back tail wags when I walk into a room, it makes me smile.
It's good stuff.
I love my dog, not as much as my kids, but he's not a far second. I
right
really
on,
love- yeah.
right on their heels.
Oh yeah, yeah. I love him. There will not be a good day when he goes. So.
Well, buddy, I appreciate this more than I can say. Both your inspiration to kind of take the leap and do this. I don't know where it's going to go. I hope it does some good, and I'm super grateful for your friendship over the years, and I expect it to continue. I have high expectations of that.
I feel the same way. You know that.
And also, you know, we could do hours on other topics, and I hope you'll join me again on this because it makes me happy, makes my heart smile.
Yeah.
There you go.
We would have had a conversation maybe a little shorter than this anyway. So
Yeah. And we just
except for
going to
the
share
details, you were like, I've already heard all that
Yeah.
crap.
Yeah. We're just going to share this with some others.
Yes, sir.
All right. I love you, Clint. Thank you,
I
man.
love you too, bud.